arrived in the States, all of us, we certainly wrote some stories about this British invasion, about how, we had another one of you guys up here earlier, a number of, and Will, I'm hoping I turn up for the reception. There are a lot of Brits running American news companies, and I do wonder, watching the journal work right now, and I think it's sort of on fire, in the positive sense. Do you think that gives you kind of a valuable sense of distance from our kind of rolling national nervous breakdown?
Yes, I think it does. I think the story is astonishing, but I don't have a dog in this fight. I do in the sense of, I'm here doing the job that I'm doing, but it's not, I think it does distance is always useful when you're a journalist or an editor, and I think having that extra distance is good, and it's also interesting when I go back to the UK to see the difference. I think people outside the US are having a bigger meltdown actually than they are inside the US, interestingly. And so you sort of pick up different perspectives. It's definitely helpful, yeah.
Do you think Washington is freaking out too much about Trump?
Actually, maybe yes, a little bit, perhaps a little bit too much. I think the stories are extraordinary that are coming out every day, and we, as the journal, we're covering them. We're not adding any spin. We're not adding any emotion to it because I think these stories speak for themselves. And I think it's too early yet to say whether or not that is justified. There's a lot going on. Some of what's happening, business really loves. Some of what's happening, they're not so keen on. So, we're here to keep telling the stories. We're not to sort of decide yet, or whatever, because it's not our job to decide whether the meltdown is too exaggerated.
Brett Baer said earlier that he felt taking the emotion out of news was important. Honestly, I was told that Roger Ailes was to be spinning in his grave. The whole point of Fox was to make sure that people had a sort of emotional connection. Do you really think that, to pull the emotion out? Isn't so much of why people read news the emotion?
Well, I think there is some. Listen, I'm only speaking about the journal. There is no room for emotion at the journal. I think our bigger.
Not even kind of like mild amusement.
But we can be funny, believe it or not, and we can be amused as well. But it's the great advantage we have is we are a business publication. So the only lens that matters for us really is what does this mean for business, for finance? We have this lens. It works to our advantage in digital hugely, and it gives us a really strong lens through which to approach the news. And this is information. We're trying to get people good information that they can use, that's valuable, that's helpful. And if we start bringing emotion into it, it becomes less valuable. So I think our strength in particular, is taking the emotion out of it. And it might be different for other outlets, but not for us.
And do you think when you see these, I'm not sure if you heard earlier, but Jim showed us these very dire figures about a decline in trust in the national media, kind of dipping down every election year. Is sort of staying in a business lane an answer to that? Is that sort of how do you try to move the needle on that?
Well, I think the decline in trust is a real challenge, but it's a challenge for everybody who's in news. It's like if people are switching away from the news, and if they don't trust it, then it's on us to win that trust back. So I think some of the things that we're trying to do at the journal are we are very clear when we approach stories that we are observers, not participants. And again, that lens I talked about, the business lens, really helps us with that. I think I ask the newsroom to check their biases all the time. Everybody has them. If you've written something, try reading it as if you come from a completely opposite standpoint. I think the other thing that we're doing, and I think this really helps us, is to be sort of radically focused on the audience. Don't think about what's the rest of the newsroom going to think, or is this going to win me a prize? What is the wider, what are the journalists going to think? That cannot be the motivating force behind journalism. It has to be, what are we doing that is useful for readers? What are we telling them that they didn't know? What are we telling them that adds value to their lives? And I think the fourth thing that I'd say about that is you have to not be afraid of the consequences of what you're going to publish. I think it's, particularly in a place like Washington where you're
charges of alleged drug use. I mean, you specifically worry that he can just hurt your brand. He can go and tell people things that they don't believe about the Wall Street Journal.
Well, I mean, no doubt that he's in a position to do that. But again, if that starts to become a consideration, then we'll stop doing our job. Now, I very much don't want it to look like there's some sort of agenda here. It's just that if you think about it, he's the world's richest man, he's extremely powerful, he's right at the heart of government with the most powerful administration in the world. We wouldn't be doing our jobs if we didn't cover Musk seriously. So we acknowledge his huge achievements. He's by any consideration, he's an incredible, extraordinary businessman, and we've covered that too. But I think if we start worrying about the consequences of what we publish, then we will stop doing the job as well as we should do.
Something I've noticed about the journal, and this isn't just you, it's also the opinion side of the journal, which you don't run, is that at a moment when, particularly the LA Times and the Washington Post management have obviously gotten scared about the consequences of certain decisions and stories, the Murdoch-owned press seems to be much less worried, and I'd say the Wall Street Journal editorial page is as hard on Trump as anybody. Is that a kind of Murdoch family value? I mean, it's sort of surprising for me to say, but I'm curious. You've worked for them for a long time. Is there sort of a Rupert Murdoch thread through here?
Well, I can't speak for the opinion pages because I don't run them.
You read them.
I read them. But I can speak for the journal newsroom, which is independent. And, I've been an editor now for two of Rupert Murdoch's newspapers, and in that time, he has never ever told me to change or drop something. I know what he thinks because he likes to talk about news. He's a news junkie. He likes gossip. And so I'm always aware of what he's thinking. But he is very respectful of the independence of the newsroom, and I'm sure that's true for the opinion pages too.
Is he enjoying the Musk reporting?
He appreciates the independence of the Wall Street Journal newsroom.
And just to, we're in Washington. Bezos yesterday announced he was rejiggering the opinion pages to be in favor of the controversial values of free markets and the First Amendment. Do you think that there's another strategy, which is Trump's in power, Trump's threatening various other commercial interests? Let's reevaluate here. And maybe let's try to win trust back from conservatives by getting a tweet from Elon Musk that's like, great job, buddy. Do you think that's a good strategy?
Listen, I think to win back trust, from whether it's from the left or the right, you have to just think about the readers and the journalism and stop, it's like if you're trying to game the system that way, then I don't think you're doing very honest journalism. It's like I don't think that the established media is quick enough to latch onto the fact that people have got so many choices now. They can go anywhere for their news. And I think for a long time, the established media just sort of sat back and thought, well, we own the news. People will always read us. And belatedly, we woke up to the fact that that wasn't the case. And so now we're getting better. And the way to win back that trust is to give readers news that they find useful, interesting, relevant, compelling, rather than playing some sort of weird internal game with ourselves about what we think journalism is.
In terms of, I'm not sure how to segue to weird internal games here, but as we were booking this event, and as perhaps people here will notice, there are relatively few women running major news organizations right now, major newspapers. At other times, there have been more, like a year ago, 2 years ago. And, Mark Zuckerberg recently celebrated the return of masculine energy and a culture that celebrates aggression a bit more. When you've worked in a male-dominated professional environment for a while, I'm just curious, what do you make of that whole thing?
I mean, we have a lot of feminine energy at the Wall Street Journal, but we have a lot of energy, full stop. It's kind of what does it mean, masculine energy? I mean, I don't know.
We'll have to ask Megan Kelly. I said we'll have to ask Megan.
Yeah, ask Megan Kelly. There are a lot of female, very senior women at the Journal. There are a lot of senior men as well, and certainly outside in the UK, there are loads of female editors. There's Bruna at the FT, there's the editor of the Mirror is a woman. Sammy at the Economist. Yeah.
Final thing, as the journal has been on fire editorially, you continue to cut costs. And some people looking at that say they're being kind of dressed up for a sale. Do you think that's true?
I get asked this all the time.
Here I am again.
Here you are again. First of all, we're not cutting costs, we're restructuring. It's like I inherited a newsroom that was set up for, I would say, it hadn't fully adapted.
You're literally also cutting costs amid the restructuring, right?
Well, because, there was along the way, but we're actually rehiring people. We have restructured, but in the process of restructuring, we've brought all sorts of new people into the newsroom. Skills that we didn't have, visual storytellers, data experts, people who are video producers, all that kind of thing. So
no sale?
No, not that I know of anyway.
I told you. Anyway, I doubt it. Thank you so much for joining us.